background history about myself. Let's see. All right. Well, I've been employed since I was out of high school, about 16, 17 years ago. I haven't been unemployed. I have almost no debt. A husband, father of 3 kids, and I'm pretty doing okay. But when I seen how bad things were, everyone always talks about how bad things are. And growing up, where I used to live in the projects, growing up in the Bronx, and the part that was considered bad. And some of the things the topics I want to talk about is like perspective and how we perceive things and how that affects us and how that can be a possible good thing or bad thing, but we may not see it as of yet. So, as growing up in the projects, I noticed there was only a few people that was actually the problem, like maybe 15, 20 people. And I lived in an area where it was like 6, 7 buildings, like 14 stories tall, with like 8 apartments on each floor. So it's literally thousands of people, like usually around anywhere from 3 to 6 people living per household. And this only took maybe 30 or 40 people to paint a negative picture on the whole group. So growing up then, I always kept that in mind, because there was a lot of nice people that helped me out, and they used to help each other, but that was overshadowed by maybe the few, who was getting into drugs or fighting or gunshots. So it made me think about certain things. As you know, like I'm a Zeitgeist member. I've been one from the start. And about being a Zeitgeist member, we're all humans, but a lot of people have a problem with labels. And as for me, how I see it, labels is not really a problem. The problem with labels is when people define themselves by only one, and they focus on that. Like I'm a Zeitgeist member, but that's not only who I am. I'm also a father. I'm an activist. I'm a human being. I like science. Labels are not fine. You can pick the labels that suit you, but we're not defined by one. We're defined by many. So when people says, oh, this person is a leader and this person is that, they're applying that label on there. They say, I just only want to be a human, but human is a label as well. So these are some of the things I think we should start paying attention to, and not jump down at on the labels thing, because that's just applying another label to a label itself. Now, the topic I'm want to talk about is we all know it's about the technology and all the information, all of that. We know. As far as most of us here, we know what is possible, what can be done. The problem is that it's our perception again, and how we perceive things, and also our values. So that's pretty much about what I want to talk about. Now, some perceptions that may seem good can have later on effects that we can't foresee. Like an example that I thought of was how, like me personally as a parent, I love kids. I love all kinds of kids. I see them on the street, I see them not doing something, I talk to them, or they're in the store and they're buying candy. I'm like, maybe you should get a banana instead. Playing with them, wrestling around with them. I love kids. But growing up, we're told, don't talk to strangers. As kids, don't talk to strangers. And that sounds good on the surface, not talking to strangers. But when you think about it, growing up, what you have now, you have a bunch of people, decent adults, and they don't interact with kids because they think, kids are told not to talk to strangers. Because, we know there's problems with pedophiles and, people worry about doing to kids, but there's so many more people who don't do those things. It's how many times a child gets lost and somebody finds them and brings them to their parent. That doesn't make the news. What makes the news? The child that gets taken away, no one finds them. And later they're found dead or something happened to them. There's probably hundreds more cases where decent people do decent things and help kids, and the only thing we see is negative. So we tell our kids, don't talk to strangers, because all we perceive is negative. And what happens is we have a generation of people, decent people, who don't interact with kids because they think, I don't want to be seen as a pedophile. I don't want to think, I'm a stalker. I don't want to do this. If you wrestle with a kid and you touch him, you're like, oh, maybe they touched you in a certain place. And a lot of people, instead of just being bothered with it, they just leave it alone. And what happens is, now we have a situation, we have lots of kids out on the street. You can't say nothing to them because, their parents tell them, they have this negative stigmatism about adults. And we suffer as a whole because of it. So those are the things about perception of value. Something that seems benign and makes sense up front, we can't see the larger picture. But that's not to say that, bad things do happen, of course, but we got to keep it in perspective of the bigger picture. And it's hard to get the bigger picture when every time all we see is just a negative. We think about, we're looking at appearances, where people, the clothes they wear, the hair, the style of their hair. We look at them and we perceive them as being different. And once we perceive them being different, we like kind of shun them away. What happens with that? They get used to being shunned away, so they don't want to be interact with anyone else. You see that people like the Gothics, when they wearing all black, and we paint this negative image on them, and so that reflects in our culture as well. And if you think about it, those are the type of people that we look at that easy to point out because they're different. Those are the type of people that we should be admiring because they go against the grain. It takes a lot of courage to try to be yourself when everything else around you is different. Those are the type of things, like a lot of us, when we are here, we have different points of view, and it's not popular. So we should understand how it is to see people are perceived different than us. They have the courage to be who they are, regardless of what the society says about them. And I think that's a good thing. Education, our perception of education, we consider it as being important. We look at it and we see how the education is. Probably some of the people here know about Alfred Cohn and Gabor Mate, their perceptions of what they talk about how kids and how we see things. It's pretty wrong, and it's kind of hard. It's not always easy. And the things that we're really passionate, about this movement. A lot of people are passionate about certain things, and once you learn something and it hits a chord with you, your first thing is you want to go tell everybody. Just like how we had in the movie. We learned about the movement, it rang with us, and we went to try to tell everyone. And what we want is we want the information that affected us to affect them in the same exact way. And then when it doesn't, it's like, oh man, how could you not see it the same way? It's how you perceive things. What are the reasons for this? Maybe it's inconvenient for them. Maybe they have other problems that they're dealing with. They just can't focus on the matter. Maybe they just don't care. Those are the tough things. Also, people, we want the best of everything. But maybe not us here, but generally people, they want the best of everything, but don't really want to sacrifice anything to get it. Then you look, and some of them don't have a lot to sacrifice to begin with. Usually what we were sacrificing now is our time and energy. And it can be kind of hard for certain people to do that. So what do we do about that? To me, from my personal experience, what I did with my family, like for instance, a couple of years ago, I became a vegetarian. That's because we're all about learning. I looked at what we're doing to the food and all the negative effects that it has with the environment, such and even our bodies. And I said, the heck with it, I'm done. So what I do, I went to tell my wife, I'm like, oh, this, and this, and she's looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, how could you not? And my kids, I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. You shouldn't do that. In the long run, it didn't work. So what I did, I changed them by actions. They see me not eating the food, then they inquired about it. My kids don't inquire about it. My son looked at something about McDonald's, and he doesn't want to eat fast food anymore. My daughter, she's looking at things about chicken nuggets, and she's changing. So through my actions and subtle hints, they eventually picked up on it, and they realized on their own, and then they eventually start changing. Now, the information that changed me didn't change them, but what I did, I found a way to present the information so that way they'll change themselves. And I think that's what a lot of us probably should focus on more, trying to find ways to help them change themselves. And how do we do that? We do that by not judging people, because we look at what they're doing. I always had this feeling, in this group, capitalism is like a dirty word. It's like, because it's associated with a lot of bad things. And you look at people, it's like, how can you do that? How can you do this? How can you do that? If you look at, like, if someone's eating meat, like, how can you do that? All the problems it's causing, or how can you work for a bank, for all the things that they do? that in the long run doesn't work, and it also puts people through a guilt trip. Maybe they do feel the way that we do feel, but they're stuck in it just as badly as we are. So if we judge them, they're less likely to want to maybe be involved. But if we accept them for who they are, their faults, maybe they bought something that came from some bad place or whatever, we don't judge them. We accept them for who they are. They're more likely to come in, and then through watching our actions, they'll be more likely to change their values as well. So instead of pointing at the finger, just ignore that, give subtle hints, and being around a bunch of people who are more socially minded and conscious, they'll be more likely to make those changes on their own without having a guilt trip. Because we want to bring more people in. These are some of the things we probably should look at doing. There's an astrophysicist named Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he said something that I thought made a lot of sense. He said, it was actually talking to Richard Dawkins, he says, you have facts, and when you present the facts, it's not, here are the facts, you're either an idiot or you're not. It's here is the facts, and here's the sensitivity to your state of mind. And since facts plus the sensitivity will convolve together creates impact. And that's the thing we want to create. We want to create impact. So we got to find the best ways to try to do that. There's many different avenues. It's not just one way. There's many different ways because many different people see ways differently. So those are the things we probably going to need some people to be really extreme. You're going to be some people who reach for that. There's going to be some people who be really mild. There's going to be some people that do it in the middle. We need all of those all the time. Another thing is, we're an emotional species. We feel things. So much as science and logic and all that is great and it makes perfect sense to some of us, most people do things because it feels good to them. Recent example of this, Con 2012. 70 million views in about a week. Why? Because people felt something with it. I watched it. I looked at it, and you see you hear about the guy, he's doing all these bad things and kidnapping kids. And the kid, his brother got killed, and he felt really sad. He was crying. It touched me emotionally. Why? Because we feel those things. So we got to start connecting more emotionally to people, not just intellectually, because most people feel things first. And if we can get them to feel good about the right things first, and then when someone comes along and tries to challenge it, that encourages them to be, just naturally be defensive, and then they want to go prove their point. Then they're going to go back and they're going to find all the right information that's already there because they feel it first. So it's a combination. It's not just one thing. It's going to be a combination of things. So, and another thing, when I first got involved in this, I was a laid back guy. I'm practical, joker, sarcastic, and so forth and so on. And when I learned this information, I started getting real serious. I changed my whole demeanor changed. I get real serious. I take things real seriously. And I realized that's not who I want to be. I want to be myself, a joking guy. But, now when I present this information, I present it from my personality, not just always a serious personality. I make a joke about certain things. And what I realized in my work was I work in a law firm. I changed a lot of minds. There's a coworker of mine who's going to school for finance. He's going to be in a bank. He wanted to work for Goldman Sachs and everything. And me and him used to go back and talk. And I would joke with him, so on and so on. 2 years later, he doesn't even want to work in the financial industry anymore. I was able to reach him, with jokes, to being myself, and that made an impact. He doesn't want to do anything with it. His girlfriend, who happens to be in a quote-unquote Republican, there goes the label again. Now, some of the things he used to talk about, she's like, oh, that's just the Democratic leftist stuff. Now, they're reading a book that I gave them called The Story of Stuff, seeing how, things are working with the environment, so they're making those changes. So it wasn't about pointing them, saying how wrong they were. It was about giving them little bits of information and letting them arrive to those decisions on their own. As we know, we have all the information on our side. We have all the evidence on our side. It's just people putting it to the way where people can actually be open up to it. And those are the things about perspective. And I'd like to end, with the quote that Margaret Mead says, and probably some of you have already heard. It says, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever does. And I think if we keep it that way, little by little, maybe not as fast as we may like it, because this system didn't happen overnight. So it may not go away overnight. But if we keep that in mind, help others, be better role models. like my kids right now, my son, he's talking about maybe I should open up a Zeitgeist thing in school, just on his own, because I gave him these ideas and he's talking about these things. You know, basically maybe that's the way we'll change the world. Thank you.
Thank you.